live from Fort Lee High School in New Jersey. We're going to talk to the president of the American Federation of Teachers, Randi Weingarten.
So, Randi, you've got teachers on the front line. Here you have a Columbia graduate, pay freeze for 3 years, despite the fact he works in the state that spends more money per pupil on education than anybody else. It seems like the same things that we've been talking about for 3 or 4 years, we continue to talk about today. And how do we turn the corner on education reform?
So, there's about 5 things that you have to do at the same time. The governors that were here, first off, can we give props to this teacher?
Exactly.
Can we just give props?
Yeah.
I'm wondering if we can pay him more.
But, so,
he said thank you for the props, I'll take some more
I'd like
money.
his salary to be doubled.
So, look, what we did in New York City when there was money is we actually increased the salaries significantly. And that's the one thing that Mike Bloomberg and we did together to try to lift the salaries so that it was a decent middle-class income. But you have to do a lot more than that. You have to do, I think, 5 things at the same time. Everybody talked beforehand about engagement of kids. Engagement of kids is huge. We have to love kids. But we also have to give teachers the tools and conditions they need to do their jobs. Last panel, Governor Malloy, Governor Markell talked about Common Core. That's a really important, rich curriculum. I think you're doing Common Core in your school as well, right?
We're working toward it.
But what happens is that teachers need the time to work with each other in order to get that done. That takes resources. You need to build the capacity of our teaching force. We need to constantly, it's not simply about plopping somebody in and then saying, okay, you're good, you're bad. I would take all those good teachers that Governor Christie was talking about, have them mentor other teachers. Pay them more for mentoring other teachers. That's the kind of thing that helps lift the profession. So, last thing is that you got to have a collaborative environment, and you actually do have to not say poverty is an excuse, but we have to try to trump it. So if kids come in hungry, we have to feed them. If kids come in without being able to read the board, we have to be able to get them glasses.
So, Deborah, how do we turn the corner on education reform? I've got to say this morning, actually, I've heard a lot of positive things. I've heard Democrats and Republicans, progressives and conservatives agreeing a lot more on core issues than they did 3 or 4 years ago when we began this. What are you seeing on the front lines?
Well, first of all, I think it's easier to talk about it than to actually do it. And I can't believe I'm about to say this, but I actually agree with everything that you just said.
See, you just proved my point. Okay, everybody, thank you. Good night. Thank you for coming. Let's go. It's time to go.
There's a caveat.
Oh, okay. There's always a caveat.
Yeah.
Deborah, yeah.
Stop.
The underlying condition that's going to allow all of these things to happen is when we finally realize that you have to empower teachers, and the only way that you can empower teachers is by having real, authentic accountability. And so the conditions that will allow all of these things to flourish, collaboration and respecting teachers more, and everything that you talked about, will never be allowed to happen unless we have true accountability and true empowerment. And that is what's being blocked. So without that, it's just a lot of talk.
So, Deborah, I'm going to ask you this first, and then I'm going to go to Randi, because this is really the $64,000 question. The one thing we've learned over the past 5 years is, at the end of the day, it comes down to great teachers on the front line. Not class size, not, you can list 1,000 things. It's great teachers on the front line. So let me ask you first.
Okay.
How do you grade the teachers? How do you measure success in a classroom in a fair way to teachers, whether they're working in Newark or whether they're working in Bergen County?
Well, first of all, the most important things can't be measured objectively. Is this child compassionate? Is this child thinking at a high level, reflected? The only way you can really look at that is how it's reflected in how he or she speaks and writes. These kinds of things cannot be measured by a standardized test, and therefore what you really need to do is empower principals to build their team, nurture their team, evaluate their team, hold their team accountable like you do in any other enterprise, whether it's a football team or a business. The leader has to lead. So right now we have a set of rules that do not allow our leaders to lead, block them from leading. They can't evaluate their own people. They can't pick their own people. It's impossible to run anything now.
So give the coach the power. Now, Randy, we've been talking 3 or 4 years on and off camera,
right,
and you've been talking about what you guys are trying to do for teacher standards. Are you making progress? Are you getting closer to an overall system that you can implement nationwide?
When in the places where you don't hear the pitch battle, that's where we're making progress. In the places where you hear the pitch battle and the finger pointing, that's where we're not making progress. Because, you know, let me just throw one stat out that you and I talked about. We talked about during the, when everything was going on in Wisconsin and Ohio.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Income inequality. From 73 to 2000, the union density in this country, private sector, went from 34% to 8%. At the same exact time, income inequality grew by 40%.
Right.
The newest stats that we've seen have shown that the real achievement gap is rich and poor. 40% achievement gap in the last 20 years. Now, so the issue becomes, I'm totally in on accountability. It has to be focus on quality and focus on fairness. And the places that we're doing that are, we were just talking earlier about Lowell, Massachusetts. Because I'm thinking about not school change, but whole district change. Mm-hmm. Because in terms of public education, and this Fort Lee High School is a public school. And it's, in terms of public education, our job is to educate all kids.
Okay, but Randy, let me, again, I go back to the question. You've been telling me for 3 years, 4 years that you guys are aggressively working on a way to evaluate. You basically say, Joe, you want teachers evaluated? We're working on it.
So
we're moving forward. And so I'm asking, are you getting closer to national standards?
Look at the places that I would look at in terms of really whole school and whole district change. Look at New Haven, look at Lowell, Massachusetts, look at Baltimore, Maryland, look at ABC School District in LA. Now, the stuff that's happened in terms of the budget has actually hurt. Where I disagree with you is that really good teachers will tell you they need lower class size so that they can differentiate instruction.
And by the way, I don't have any information other than what the Gates Foundation has been studying. I'm just saying.
Listen, I had, as a high school teacher, I had 150, 160 kids.
Let me say, as a parent, I want 20 kids in my class and not 40 kids in my class. So I'm only repeating that because at the end of the day, it does come down to the people you represent. It comes down to the teachers on the front line.
There's a flexibility that you have to have in a school. Small class size matters a lot more in reading than it does in another subject. If you're given the freedom and the flexibility to run the school the way you want, which is how all schools in this country should run, and I agree we need to talk about district change and the whole country, but to me, the way you change the whole country is by operating each school in the way that best serves the teachers, because if you best serve the teachers, you will best serve the kids. And to me, the way to best serve a teacher is to respect them and give them full empowerment. And you can only do that if you also hold them fully accountable.
I'm going to worry in the process we're going to lose teachers like Jose Fuentes.
That's right. That's
$50,000 a year, 67 students. A smaller class would help?
I agree with you. In terms of smaller classes would help, but I think that I need the support.
Exactly.
I think if someone's coming in and giving me meaningful feedback and providing me
and I'll say it,
areas,
you need a higher salary. You need a higher salary. You need to be valued.
One other thing that's occurred here this morning that doesn't occur in the larger arena around us is we've got to get rid of the demonization aspect.
Exactly.
Demonizing teachers, demonizing the union, that's no way to get progress.
Let's do this. Randy and Deborah, I would love for you guys to come on Morning Joe next week, the week after, and let's just set aside 40 minutes and have a long conversation.
You got a book coming out. It's worth it. Let's do it.
You two have already started to agree with each other. This is a good sign.
Beautiful.
Looks like we're doing it.
Okay, good. All right, Randi Weingarten, Dr. Deborah Kinney, and Jose, thank you so much. A big hand for Jose, everybody.